Next time we have a,
You have no life,
I love it.
maybe it won't be that late.
right? Like, this is just.
I was
not the way to
saying,
do
like,
it.
And they did the
when
same
the
thing
city
in-
council has a really long agenda item, they're more efficient, but I said,
I
I
don't
don't
know who's doing
know
that, Sophia
if the
and
planning
someone.
commission speeds it up at all. We'll see.
It makes me angry, but I.
But I forgot Kevin wasn't gonna be here.
Oh, what do we can't do anything.
Maybe.
You
We'll
can't do
see.
anything.
So, I'm sorry, at 8:30, do I just stand up and leave? Should I walk out that way?
Yeah, I think we could just say,
Depending on where we are, you
Excuse
want me to come
myself.
back?
Who else is gonna be here? Are we gonna lose
I
quorum
was just
if
gonna
she-
say,
if
like,
she goes?
Sometimes it's nice to put. the-
Matt's not
like,
here.
If you wanna put the agenda up.
do we need one?
And
we need
Kevin's
one more.
not
When the- Yeah, as the public
Sean's
comes.
not here?
So Sean's the only one left.
I can do
Matt is not coming and Kevin.
Kevin.
I don't know how hard it is
And
to-
then
Sean is the
If
one left.
Sean's
It's
here.
not hard.
if Sean's here,
it
we're
just
okay, right?
Yeah.
a little bit
You're okay
delayed.
right now, unless you leave,
Oh,
honey.
as-
He's leaving at
I have to
8:30.
leave at 8:30. I have to drive my daughter to dance.
Hopefully Sean comes.
I can come back.
We might have a,
There we
like,
go.
we might have a recess.
Well, if we have 4-4 and they're really causing problems, it might be a tie and we need you here to break it.
I'm making her do point and no one, we know no one in the point class.
Oh, it's because it's no one.
They're all littles.
Yeah, I know. And the thing that's crazy is Ava like is not doing point this year, and they just said Vivian's
We
ready for
have
point.
4, but if
I'm
Heidi
like,
leaves,
She's 11.
Who's, is Sean's? thing?
Sean's hasn't come.
Okay.
If Sean's
Is
here,
this
then we're
Sean's
still have a
seat?
quorum.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
Matt's
I'm sorry.
not coming.
That's okay.
It's not like I have to go far.
No, yeah, we could.
I'd be back by 8:52.
We
I
could
would-
just
I
have
would
it.
send my
We
husband,
could,
have to hold
we could have an intermission with the treats
That's what I think.
and wait for you to come back.
Oh,
We could just be efficient.
Yeah,
I'm all for
Like, bad
efficiency.
idea.
Like,
I would love a fish story.
I will not ask any questions.
Okay, let's see.
And on intermission, I'll be selling treats in the back.
Have a concession stand.
So Corey, did you hear we're having an efficient meeting today?
I'm sorry, guys.
I'm hearing that even louder now.
Just so that we can have Heidi here in case. Here.
Oh, we're still not 7. We got 3 minutes.
We got 3 minutes for him to come.
Or at any time before.
Or 3 minutes after.
Doesn't bother me.
I even have really good thoughts for item number 6.
Do it.
We could move to switch the order.
It's okay.
Administrative.
What is factory with a K?
What's that?
What is factory with a K on the front road?
A PR firm.
Public relations?
I think that's what they do. Or some type of management firm like that.
Cool. I knew you would know.
It's digging deep into the cobwebs, but it's something like that.
Okay.
Some type of media, something like that is what they do.
I'm gonna text Sean and he's coming.
Advertising agency,
An advertising.
Central Newtown.
Ah, you found you find a business license
Did you,
or
like,
did you
Google
find
it?
the site?
She Googled it.
I could have Googled it. I could have Googled it. Yeah, let's be honest, Heidi, you could have Googled that one.
I was gonna say, was that beer, isn't there a beer factory? It's like a
Yes.
house. in
Yeah,
Salt
that's
Lake.
down.
We do
in-
not
in Salt
need
Lake,
that.
right?
No.
No, I don't want that.
Please don't let that one happen. Can I petition for that?
Why? It would be good business.
It'd be a good one.
Creepy business.
Yeah, but they're
Really
fun.
good business.
Yeah, as a my
Oh, good, there's Sean.
They were actually named, I think,
lord, one of the best in the world.
one of the best in the nation this
The
week.
Fear Factory?
Yeah.
It's like you said.
Like the
in
top
highway.
10 or something.
I don't even
And
watch
you're giving the thought. I just texted you, so.
But everybody has.
Not just freak out, she's just leaving, and so I wanted to make sure we would have people here,
Okay.
so. We are good to go? Okay, welcome everyone to Planning Commission meeting. We are missing our chair, Kevin Daly, and I'm the vice chair, Becky Wright, and will be in his place today. We're going to start with Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. We're going to turn our time over to Christina, our planning commissioner, for thought or prayer.
It's just nice and short and sweet. It says, as planners, we have the delicate opportunity to remember the historical value of Centerville and why we want to live here and why we feel it's so special. But we also need a plan for the future. It is important for us to understand the successes and failures of the past if we are to grow and make progress in the future. So let us remember the past is behind us. Let us learn from it. The future is ahead of us, and let us prepare for it. And that's it. So I'll give a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for all the many blessings that have given to us, and we're grateful for this opportunity that we have to meet as a planning commission, that we'll be able to make the best decisions for this citizens and the city that we live in, and bless that we'll be able to make sure that we have the city in mind, and we love thee and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Christina. And as I mentioned, we excuse Chair Daly today, and later on we will excuse Heidi if we can. Hopefully we'll be efficient today, and we won't have to excuse her. We'll be done before that. But we have a good agenda today with several items of business, so thank you all for coming. We're going to turn to our first item, which is a public hearing, a small subdivision waiver of 1441 North Main Street. And we're going to turn the time over to Corey for the staff report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wright and members of the commission. Your first item, as mentioned, is a small subdivision. Just a recap of the process. Within the subdivision ordinance, typically it's a conceptual, preliminary, and final approval with a final recommendation going to the city council. However, in the conceptual section of the subdivision ordinance, we have chosen that 2 lots or less, which is interesting, is there a 1-lot subdivision, but 2 lots or less, under state code it's 10 or less, you can shorten that process. We call that a small subdivision waiver, where it's a one step with the planning commission, and then they move forward with a typical plating process to record it at the county. So the request is property at 1441 North Main. You can see it on the screen, as well as there should be a little graphic in your staff report. They'd like to take that larger piece of property that about a year ago was rezoned from agricultural low to residential low. They'd like to divide that property into 2 lots. In your subdivision package, you'll see that the southern garage area is being divided out from the home. That's where a lot line would go. And then you see I don't want to call it a flag lot because we don't allow flag lots, but the width of the lot would be the required amount, but in the backyard, behind the existing home, it would then, the lot line would turn to the north and it would become a flag-shaped style lot. They have made their arguments, and will probably make their arguments of why they've chosen that direction. A lot of it is based on topography and access from their point of view. From staff's review, we looked at it. It's a qualifier for the small subdivision because we're not dedicating new streets and so forth. We do notice that we still need public utility easements if this were to go forward for the second lot and establish all the utility services to it. The major issue that staff raises in there is twofold. They're the same subject. Under the subdivision ordinance, we expect right angles for property lines. And that's typically what I would label as the cookie cutter lot, where you just rectangle it up and we draw lines perpendicular to the street. In this case, we're not doing that. We're creating that flag-shaped style lot into the back. And so I bring up a second point of the purpose of the subdivision ordinance or scope is for orderly development. And so staff's argument is this the best way to manage the property? From our standpoint, they indicate that the home is in pretty good shape, so just automatically tearing down the home would be burdensome. And you can see that the shape of the home occupies a good portion of the property, doing its rectangle length. So our view is that if we're going to do a subdivision here, should we not just make the perpendicular cut for the smaller lot? Make it a 60-foot wide lot and carry that either partially or entirely to the west and intersect the back lot line with a somewhat perpendicular lot line. And the idea behind that is that the home can last for a while, but it leaves a large enough parcel with the existing home that if it were to be torn down anytime into the future, they could tear it down and get a couple of more lots out of that parcel. So the topography is an issue, but we deal with topography where we step a property down through small retaining walls, and that's likely what you'd have here. Another part that's a little bit difficult in figuring out is today's requirements for storm drain is to manage and keep all your water on your property. It's no longer a detention, it's a retention. And so the concept is that, how do we appropriately retain? And if the flag-shaped lot is the lower end of the project, you could retain there, but now you're probably creating a shared retainment. And so, okay, now we got to put in the cross-water agreements, and they're both sharing a detention basin now amongst each other. And for such small lots, that's kind of difficult to monitor, manage, and take care of. And so it'd be nice to have 2 to 3 longer lots with each one retaining in their backyard. And so that's why we make the argument that the better configuration could take place. And so if we just did the quick perpendicular style, the smaller garage lot could end up with a retaining in the back. The house that's maintaining could end up with their retaining in the back, and then if it's ever divided, it could be accommodated. So that's our argument, that it's probably not as orderly development as the ordinance. However, Planning Commission can decide differently. The ordinance does allow discretion to alter the perpendicular line expectation. So we're recommending that it really be re-looked at and see if there's a better way to divide up the property for future purposes.
Thank you, Corey. Anyone have any questions initially for Corey? I have some questions, but I wanted to open it up to everyone first.
Tell me again, this perpendicular line,
Is it just running east to west? That's what you
Yeah,
mean?
so the idea is you put all the lots fronting a road, public road, and you run their side lot lines straight and perpendicular to the back.
so what line doesn't do that?
The smaller garage lot will be a flag shape under their proposal.
Yeah, but is
Like
the
that.
line still essentially perpendicular to Main Street?
Well, it's perpendicular, then cuts and turns, does not intersect the rear lot in a perpendicular fashion. That's not my phone, is it?
Any other questions for Corey? I'm interested in finding out, it doesn't look like from what they submitted that we can see the parcel on the back that you could see with the zoning map that you had, that long skinny parcel. Does that, how is that being treated in here?
Don't know, they would have to look at, the engineer look at the survey, it may be a gap, it may be a cross, and so the final survey for the subdivision plat would either encompass that area through clearing it up or not encompassing that area because they don't own it.
And I was looking at the staff report and the setbacks, even on the width, with that jagged, I mean, we can talk more about this later, but that's all in compliance, but it's not, we have a lot of things that we're unsure about, and that's kind of the reason why you're wanting to table that as well.
Yeah, they leave, I think it's 73 feet on width, and the other one's 126 on width. So both lots meet them 60 feet. But to achieve the 8-foot setback, you're seeing a little bit of a dog leg on the side lot line to achieve the required 8-foot setback. So it's not quite perpendicular, but that would be considered mostly perpendicular. It's the turning of the lot line not intersecting the west lot.
Right. Okay.
We're raising their issue with.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? If not, we will invite the applicant to come forward and state your name and give us your response to what you've heard from staff and anything else you'd like us to know.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Yeah, my name's Eric DeFries, and I own this with a partner. So just to address the gap, that was brought up when we did the zoning change. So our surveyor and engineer looked at it. It's just, we own to the back. It's something to do. I don't understand how it all works on the computer, but it's not a real gap. It's our property. So when we resurvey it, then our property will go to the back. It's not owned by anybody else. And we confirmed that with the surveyor and the engineer. And then just our thought process, so the house is built in the 60s that's on the property, and the way it was built, unfortunately, it's not perpendicular to the north line, and so because of that, we kind of have to jog to meet the setback, and we can't go straight back. So that's the reason for that, but the house is in great condition. I think it maybe had one owner, maybe two owners from the people we bought it from, and they just took immaculate care of it. So from our perspective, it's not really economically feasible for us to tear that down and make 3 lots, and so that's why we were proposing it this way. And then the other reason is when you actually go walk the lot, so you've got the garage side, and if you head to the west, it's essentially a road that goes and turns to the right. And so it's very steep behind the existing house. And so anytime you actually access that back area, the people that live there now that are renting it, the people that lived there before would walk basically behind the garage to get down there. There's not really a accessible way directly behind the house. And so from our perspective, we plan to sell the lot. And then, our intention right now is to keep the house as a investment property, rental property. And so we just thought that we're making a better lot by giving more acreage, and it's really a pretty gentle decline back to the back and then turn right. It's really flat back there where we've got the lines drawn. And so, we envisioned that whoever bought the lot, that would be a place they could, put a basketball hoop or a pickleball court or something like that. So that's our reason for proposing it. I understand the staff's concern. I just know from our perspective, we have no intention probably in the next 15 years of knocking that house down. But I understand, I also understand the perspective, but that's why we drew it up this way, to get some feedback from you guys. We think it makes the most sense. We think it provides a really good half-acre lot to somebody that would like to build a little bit bigger house with some ability to build something else in the back. And really, we just don't think there's a lot of use for that back area for the main house. When we bought this house, the people that had lived there prior, they had they did like photography and stuff in that back area, and there were all these trees and everything, and we actually, like, as part of buying the house, we had to agree to cut down a bunch of trees because the neighbors were mad about leaves dropping, and so it's really like a very, natural area, and so it'll just continue to be that way, for us, or if we sell the house to whoever, so we just think it's better use of the land, but we also understand if you guys agree, differently, and we're willing to redraw the lot line, more perpendicular, if that's what the city would like, because our intention is just to get 2 lots out of this, area.
All right, thank you. Can you speak to staff report? Have you been in touch with UDOT about changing in driveway curb cut and?
Yeah, so there's already a curb cut there, so the detached garage has a curb cut into Main Street. So we've talked to them, and we don't anticipate that it'll be anything additional because the curb cut already exists. For that, there's 2 curb cuts right now, one to get to the garage of the house and one to get to the outbuilding garage.
You don't anticipate it being difficult with UDOT, you might be surprised, but that is good news that you've already been in touch with them.
Yeah.
What about the city, so the city engineer has not been able to review the drainage, but you did include that in your statement as well.
Yeah, we have a memo from Wasatch Civil that basically states that, with the dense vegetation, this soil type, and low runoff potential, let's see here. Their recommendation is that the proposed subdivision regrade the western property line to ensure the runoff is retained on site. The western portion of the property contains approximately 2,500 square feet, which would only require minor grading to provide the necessary retention. This would satisfy the stormwater quality requirement to retain to the 80th percentile.
Yeah, thank you for including that. Okay, do you have anything else to add with that, though?
No.
Okay. Okay, great. Is there anything else that anyone has any questions for the applicant?
Are you gonna relocate the curb cut for the new lot?
No.
It's just gonna be over there on the left-hand side?
Yep.
And then what's the practical buildable envelope, would you estimate?
I don't have a good estimate, but I think you could do a fairly long and skinnier house and still meet the setbacks. So it's 60-foot wide lot, which is just what the zoning requires. And so I think a normal house there, but I don't have square footage numbers.
Were you anticipating the house be on the lower portion or up
Up.
facing Main Street?
We would anticipate that the house would be, basically replace the garage and go back with like a walkout basement.
It's pretty small, narrow.
I think the idea, if I were just looking at it on the maps, I'm seeing that the current house that's there is pretty narrow and long. It'd almost like mimic it, but just going east to west. Is that kind of the idea?
Exactly, yeah. And I think you can meet this, I mean, we can go 8 feet. So you can come out on both sides. I don't know what the specs of the garage are.
What's just for my understanding of scale, how big is the existing house? What's the square footage on that one?
It's 2,000 square feet up, 2,000 square feet down. So I think it might be 4,200 square feet. This is a whole acre, this lot.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This item has been scheduled for a public hearing, and so at this time, we will open it up to the public for anyone who's wishing to make a comment. doesn't look like anyone is rushing to the microphone. So we will close the public hearing. And staff, do you have any other response or questions or comments after hearing from the applicant?
No, if the one, just for information purposes, if they were to choose a home to the back, we'd have to get the fire department review, 20-foot access, likely have to establish a hydrant if it was actually built back there, but that can be done also during building permit review.
Okay. Thank you. Okay,
Can I ask one more question
Yeah.
I should have asked earlier? Once this is approved, we're gonna have a garage on a parcel that's not got a primary building. So can we condition that?
Yes, like
so
you have
that
in the past.
Upon approval, it has to be demolished?
Good catch.
I guess, Corey, just if you can explain how often we are able to move forward without some of these things met. I mean, we've talked about, for sure, the way that the subdivision has been drawn up, but specifically the utility easements, city engineer, and some of those other issues that were mentioned in the staff report. How often do we move forward without that information at this stage?
It's mixed. This commission in the last has a temperament to want to see more upfront. But the ordinances does allow you to condition approval. And so it's really at your discretion. Do you think there's something that you need to see to make sure you're comfortable with giving the waiver and need to see it from other staff or need to see it addition, correction to their plans? We simply noticed right off the bat that we were concerned about it being an underutilized area and how to handle the drainage and stormwater. So we chose to put it on an agenda so we could debate about that.
Yeah.
But so you could keep the proposal as is and have them address the missing items or the items to be, discovered. Or you could approve it conditioned upon those things taking place.
Great, thank you. All right, commissioners, let's open it up for discussion. Thoughts? It's not as fun being in this position as I thought it was. You have to make everyone talk. Anyone have anything to say?
I'll lead out, since there's such a rush for the microphone. I'm inclined to vote to table in part because the items identified in the staff report feel like they're not ready yet, and I would rather see the result rather than just condition it and hope things work.
I follow this, I'm falling under the same direction. I'm also a little bit, I know that, buildable, you can be creative with lots and buildable area, but I'm a little bit concerned about not being the right angle, having it be sort of this wonky lot from the beginning, and sometimes if it's a wonky lot and they show us how it's gonna work, it makes more sense, but when it's a wonky lot and it doesn't actually show us, yes, we actually have the buildable area with the setbacks and the easements and all of these things, everything just becomes less and less likely to me.
Were you saying you'd like to see an actual, plan of a home on it, just to see kind of?
I just think there's enough in the staff report that have been pointed out that's missing, that it's less likely that it will be able to happen. But I don't need a whole, that's not, at this stage, we don't need a whole plan, but it's just when something is so different than, with a waiver situation, it would be nice to see a little bit more to give me confidence to feel like I can grant a waiver.
He's looking at us.
Oh, yeah, I agree with Becky and Mason on this one. I'm tumbling around in my head and I can't find what I'm looking for, but in my mind, he says, well, your minimum is 60, and I've met that. And then you have your side setbacks and the building of what really does that look like? And to me, this is starting to look like something that's very scrunched, that doesn't actually fit in this neighborhood, that would fit somewhere closer like the Hive, or, you know, down closer to the frontage road where we have those, and I don't know if there's anything, I'm sorry that I don't know this, but I don't know if there's anything that says, hey, this doesn't actually
Yeah.
fit this neighborhood.
Well, I think it's the feasibility also of.
Vice Chair Wright, just so you know, what you're really talking about is the 2,000 square foot build area and making sure that it meets the 2-to-1 ratio either direction.
Yeah,
And then once they show that, that'll tell you whether they met a buildable area, and then somebody designs the house around that
that's
buildable
up to
area.
the architect to make it
Yeah.
fancy.
And I can imagine in my mind that it could potentially maybe meet the buildable area, but I don't feel like we have enough information for me to say, yes, I feel confident that this can happen, and I would like to grant a waiver for this sort of thing. I don't know.
I agree, there's not enough information for me to make a good decision.
What do you think, Shauna?
I'm with that on the idea. As you kind of mentioned, the wonkiness of the, if that's a word,
It
wonkiness.
is, the wonky donkey.
It's in the ordinance.
It's, yeah.
Under the slang clause.
Yeah. The other thing that I think, I feel like there's a few hurdles with UDOT. I would love to see UDOT, the easements, all of these other things really addressed, because we have these in our code for a reason, because they're things that we follow, so that we can make sure that even in a situation where the lot is not standard, it can happen. So if those things are met and we're able to see a little bit more from the applicant, I would feel more comfortable granting. Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to table this small subdivision waiver request as outlined in the staff recommendation A through F.
Second.
And this is for property 1441 North Main Street, parcel 2-015-0002. All right, any other comments?
Yeah, before we start, I don't think this needs to be part of the recommendation, but the fact that there would be an accessory structure remaining on a lot needs to be addressed the next time this comes back around, if it were to go that way.
Let's just add that as a directive.
Okay.
As G.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move to amend so that sub G, the remaining garage structure be addressed with some kind of recommendation or condition.
A second. And let's all vote on that amendment, adding of G.
Aye.
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 Okay, the amendment passed, and now back to the original motion on the recommendation to table the small subdivision waiver. Any other further discussion? Okay,
Aye.
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 Motion to table has passed. Thank
Chair
you.
Wright, may I address the applicant? We'll follow up with a letter of this to you so that you have it in writing and get that to you shortly.
Just so I'm aware, like, we submitted what do I need to do to submit it to the engineer? Because I submitted the water with my application, so that's where I'm.
We'll talk and then I'll put pressure behind scenes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much for coming. All right, we're going to move on to our second item of business. It's also a public hearing, legislative decision, zone map amendment to remove the hillside overlay on the Rockwood Farm subdivision. And I'll turn the time over to staff.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wright and members of the commission. As you recall, this was in your last meeting. We had talked about, I don't know if we got the map there available to you, but we talked originally, this is just south of Chase Lane. Mr. Knight had brought in his lot to be removed from the overlay zone. We had a discussion in the last meeting to include the lots to the north, one lot to the north, one lot to the south within that area, and bring it back to the commission for further discussion. And the reason we had to do that is if you were to take action on those lots also, as was discussed, we needed to make sure we gave the proper state and ordinance, local ordinance required notice to each lot owner, since they weren't originally part of the petition, so we've done that. My understanding from your last meeting is that they were present at the meeting, but we still needed to make sure we officially noticed them. So we are back with the official notice to the discussion on modifying the overlay zone. Again, it still could be the one lot as requested, the 3 lots as discussed and expanded now by staff and the commission, or a recommendation not to do it is back on the table for further discussion. So rather than rehash it, I'll just wait for
Any questions?
questions.
Thank you, and I really appreciated the staff report, historical background of how it went. It's helpful to jog the memory there, so thank you. Any questions for staff after reading the report? Great. We are efficient. We are going to open it up to the applicant, if the applicant is here, to come and speak and let us know anything you would like to know or address from the staff report that you've seen.
Becky, I don't have much more to add from the generous conversation we had last time. And my view is it's a perfunctory situation for the 3, I think, and the owners are here for the north and the south, again in support. But I'll leave them to make any comment publicly. But I would just say that we have reiterated the facts that we did berm up that one, the western fence, so nothing's going to go over there. Nothing's going to go north because north is a little bit higher, and the south property is about the same level as us, so nothing's going to roll off water-wise that way. So, as it pertains to the grade of the properties there, they're in a very slight gradient. It doesn't get anywhere near the gradient that Kevin Campbell's lot, the city engineer, has, which really slopes down. These are very, very mild, and I think staff's made that comment too. So just reminding everyone of, kind of the appeal there to have that removed, so that we would like to be able to put the deck on the house at the back. We took it off because it was a safety hazard. My wife actually stepped on a screw and had to go to the hospital because of it. So it was removed, and we have a plan that's actually stamped by York Engineers and ready to go, subject to today's decision. So I'd like to submit that, Corey, to you once, should we go ahead with this, that is. So right now we have 2 doors that would walk out, and you would take one giant step down. And so, trying to see if we can avoid that situation, we would like to remove that. And what that does is it increases our impervious area from 40% to 60%. I'm not sure that I have anything else to add. So.
Okay, any questions for the
I
applicant?
have one question,
Yeah.
which I failed to ask last time. Does the new plan and the new deck change the percentage of impervious surface from what you had original, that you took down, and you're going to put up new? Does that change that percentage?
There's an extension of 6 foot out from where the old concrete was. That's what the new plan will have, to go 6 foot out. And the main reason for the discussion, I guess, is if it was just a normal deck, it probably doesn't have a problem complying with the existing, but it's going to have a roof pitched over the top of it. No, it did not. So it's now going to be attached to the home.
I see.
So that's why we're sort of talking about this. And the reason for it extending out further is so that the pitch of the trusses on the roof is adequately supported. And
Okay.
And is the 6 foot additional, is that cement underneath on the ground as
it will
well?
be, yes. Yep.
So currently you have, everything that the deck currently had was, or that had, you had cement underneath that.
That's correct.
So
Correct.
just putting a roof over the top of that is somehow pushed you over the top
Well, this, the six.
It re-
this and
it-
the-
It's a 6 foot.
So it renews the application for the deck because of that. And so I think we talked about last time that the house at least represented 40% of the lot when it was built, including the deck. And so because of the roof, correct me if I'm wrong here, Corey, it renews the application with the current standards, and that's why we're looking at some relief on the 40% rule so that we can put the deck back there by getting the overlay removed and going to 60%.
So if I'm understanding correctly, because you tore down the deck and now you're trying to put it back in,
You have to get it.
you have to get an approval.
A
to
permit for that.
have what you already have.
Yes, and we would struggle with the configuration of the property right now to do that with the current rules.
Great. And I know last time we talked a lot about the grading, and so thank you for addressing that. We talked
Yep.
about water and all of that, and I think we've talked at length about that.
Right.
So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this item has been scheduled for a public hearing. We will open it up and invite any members of the public who wish to be heard to come to the microphone, state their name, and let us know what you think. Specifically, anyone affected would be great.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission. My name's Jared. I live in 991 to the north, and I strongly support removing the hillside overlay from these 3 properties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Neil Brown. I have the property that's just south of Mark's. I support Mark in this, in removing the overlay. I don't necessarily have the need myself there on my property, but I support Mark in what he's able to do. I don't have necessarily any plans myself there for doing it in the future, but I'd like to have that off there for future residents there that would own my property.
And you're at 927?
949,
949.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
927 is Kevin Campbell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing no one, we will close the public hearing, and I don't think the applicant needs to respond to anything in the public has said unless, okay, great. And any other further questions for staff? Based on what we heard or based on what the applicant has said? All right, Corey, do you have anything to add? Sean, did you want to say something?
I guess it's just the additional roof overhead that's literally pushing us into this.
Well, plus
this
the
conversation.
cement.
That's a little nebulous. If, we don't have an actual percentage of what used to be there. So I suspect between the RV parking driveway, house, and existing deck, for whatever reason, probably already exceeded the 40% to some degree. But tearing it down and then coming in for a permit triggers the non-conforming loss, and now we're in a situation where fixes need to be made to bring it into compliance with 40%, or amend the ordinance that allows them to go up to the 60% because the base zone is 60%, the RL. And that's really the 2 choices that the property owner has. And likelihood to the north, just visually, it already exceeds the 40%. So again, this is one of those things that, what happens through time. When it was originally approved, it probably came down and said, I'm just building this driveway in this house. And then we don't require permits for flat work, so RV pads and patios don't come in for permits. It doesn't exempt you from the ordinance at some point in time, and I think we've achieved that some point in time.
You're saying patios you don't need a.
Do not
So
need to get,
the addition of 6 extra feet that he's talking about.
if it was just the patio, if it was just the cement patio, a deck is a structural attachment, you need a permit, but the cement patio, RV pads, driveways, those are not required permits from the city, but if you exceed a certain percentage and come in something that needs a permit, you might get flagged.
Great, thank you. I, for one, am inclined to recommend approval for this. We've talked at length with applicant, who has also addressed some of our concerns that we had our first time. The fact that we have all the lots creates a more harmonious zoning instead of just a spot zoning, which is what we were concerned about, at least I was concerned about, and is not great planning last time. And I also feel like it is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood as far as what exists there currently and what we would approve to have existing as well. Any other thoughts?
I agree.
I lean with that as well.
Great, I would, go ahead.
I'm gonna probably vote no, but that's because I feel like the cart is driving the horse here on this legislative decision. But I understand the rock and the hard place that the applicant finds himself in. But it is not, I don't think we're doing an analysis based on what is principled, we're doing an analysis based on what makes sense.
I'm interested to know, Mason, I don't like when it's reverse cart driving the horse, all that things. I'm interested to know if you believe there is a situation in which the applicant does, a situation like this in which that would guide a legislative decision. Because truly, the best possible planning is we foresee hypotheticals, we plan for the future, but then sometimes things happen where, private property rights or different things come forward that help us to see a change needing to be made. So I'm interested to see in what realm you would be comfortable with
Where
that
we did an
situation.
evaluation of the hillside, and then
Okay.
we weren't looking at a spot. Because if the zone isn't working, we should look at the zone. But carving out microtransactions of the zone doesn't always lead to the right outcome. I'm willing to say that it's probably the right outcome. If Mason's just talking, not Commissioner Kerr, that's probably, we need to get a deck on that darn thing. But that isn't the correct analysis, in my mind. And that's okay. No worries, we don't need to detangle this.
I'm just wondering maybe why this wasn't treated as like a legal non-conforming use from the beginning. Why
Yeah.
we went down the retail
The-
road.
The issue is, legal nonconforming use is that you have to have gotten a permit or met an ordinance in place at the time the construction took place. We don't have that data. We can only assume, because the hillside was in place when the homes were built. So the 40% was already in place. And so is this a situation where simply through time, somebody made improvements that didn't comply with the zone? And if they didn't comply with the zone, regardless of the made improvements, they don't get kicked into category of conforming or legal non-conforming. And so the assumption today, without all of the past data, is that we had a situation where over time, they became non-compliant with the ordinance. So there is no legal established right. Is there a window that maybe that's different? Maybe, but less likely. It's the probable versus possible. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable?
Don't have enough information to say one way or the other. I just think, to Mason's point, whichever person he had on it, he should be allowed to maintain and upkeep his home. So if that, under the current, architectural design requires a little bit this, that, and the other to make it all function, and I don't think we should go with that. You should be allowed to maintain your home. So, anyway, I'm inclined to go forward with it.
Any other thoughts? Great, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make it. I hereby make a motion for the Planning Commission to recommend approval of the zone map amendment for Lot 101, Lot 102, and 103 of the Rockwood Farms subdivision to be removed from the hillside overlay for the suggested reasons for the actions A through E, G, other page. Yeah.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion or debate?
I'd move to amend so that it's only the applicant's lot, in part because our discussions about all three lots while helpful, is not being driven by the need for a deck.
All right, there's a motion to amend, to have include just the initial lot, which would be, is that 102?
975.
Yeah, 975, but in the lot, do you know which lot that is?
Oh, yes, 102.
102. Do I have a second?
Can I ask a question? No? Okay.
No second? All right, the motion to amend fails for lack of a second. We're back to our original motion to approve, recommend approval for lots 102, 101, 102, and 103. Any other discussion or debate? If not, we will go ahead.
Aye.
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 The motion passes, and as a recommended approval, and then next step, it will go with the city council.
Yes,
So he will talk with you and do the rest.
Chair, may I
Yes,
address?
go ahead.
So we will put this on the agenda. We're tentatively trying to get it on next week's agendas. We've got to check to make sure we meet all the correct noticing, but it's being attempted to be on the city council agenda next week. But check the website for notice, because as much as no good deed goes unpunished, this one might get punished. So we'll try to get the notice out correctly.
Thank you. Go ahead and address.
I just want to thank you for the decision. Obviously, it's in favour, but Chairman Mason? Kerr, sorry, apologies. I just would like to remind the Commission that the city engineer has had a look at the property. I know a formal analysis wasn't made, but a recommendation was made to staff, by staff, that the overlay be removed also. So it's not without an engineer's eyes going over that and making an analysis. A less formal analysis, put it that way. Okay, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, and you'll want to add that to the city council when you talk.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
so
Chairman.
much for coming. All right, we'll move on to our third item. It's the final site plan for the Parish Creek Business Park. This is an administrative decision, and we'll turn the time over to the staff.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wright and members of the commission. Again, you're seeing another project you've seen before. We've gone through the PDO amendment and the conceptual site plan that is attached to that project. So I don't anticipate going through line by line with you on the final site plan, but beware, the final site plan is an administrative decision by the Planning Commission, so your decision is final. From staff's point of view, it complies with the expectations. There are a few tie-ups that we believe that need to be just taken care of. The dumpster design is supposed to match the building. We know the location of the dumpster. It looks all enclosed from the site plan, but we still need to have those materials identified to ensure compliance with the design. You can either, staff is recommending you allow the zoning administrator to do that, and then if there's a dispute, to come back to you, but you can decide if you're comfortable with that. An oddity here for this one is that the lots were already platted. So now we're combining the lots and putting things together, so that plat amendment under state law is still required. And so although you make the final site plan decision for the design and layout, there's one more state law requirement is that we have to amend the plat to combine the lots. And so we've added a condition in there to do that. We've had past letters on the past projects for this lot area from the utility providers, but in this configuration, we don't have the letters from South Davis Sewer, South Davis Metro Fire, and Dominion Energy. And so I call that out. They've shown capacity in the past, but particularly with South Davis Fire, the infrastructure for sewer and all of that is in place, so I'm not worried about that. It's been this whole issue with the fire department, making sure that they have their access. They've agreed in the dialogue with the layout, but I would just like that final report because we were in a transition to a new fire marshal. So I just like that final report from the fire marshal on that. So we're recommending approval with the conditions stated. And if you agree, move it forward. If you don't agree, let us know what we need to do.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any questions for Corey? If not, we'll invite the applicant to step forward and respond to staff report and anything that was just said.
My name is Chad Randall. Corey covered everything very well. We are working on all those outstanding items, and we don't have any problems. So unless there's any questions, that's all.
The applicant? Great, thank you. This item is not a public hearing, correct? I mean, if I'm wrong. So we do not have to open that up. So let's open it up to discussion for the commission. One thing I remember from this was the height of the fence. We were concerned about that, and that was to provide storage for Yard A. Corey, can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's a 6-foot fence. What the commission discussed last time is any attachments on top of the 6-foot fence regarding security. So you put on a condition and no razor wire, barbed wire, and so forth. So it's a 6-foot chain link fence with earth tone slats. And then it included landscaping. If they have to do the outdoor storage, they're required to do the screening, but the landscaping was also, because there was A and B option, and the planning commission approved the landscaping with the fence.
Yep. And then we also talked about the, maybe we didn't talk about the sidewalk. Maybe that was the previous time that we started this, but the sidewalk is leading all around, accessible.
Yeah, that was modified. You were remembering correctly. There was a lot of discussion and modification. A previous amendment changed that. They went with a pavilion connection as part of the amenities. And what you're seeing is the PDO is relocating that at the end of the cul-de-sac and moving it to the south side of the building with a pedestrian path.
By the proposed building B.
Yep. And the PDO amendment moved that location.
Which, you know, you can argue that that's a better spot for it, for the development, you know.
Yep.
So, okay. Anything else anyone wants to ask staff about? I know there were a lot of things that had to be figured out with this, and I appreciate the applicant for addressing all of those concerns and still in the process of addressing those. It looks like they have met all of the provisions of the zoning ordinance, and I can't think of anything that would prevent us from approving this, again, administrative decision. Anything else anyone wants to say?
I just have a question. Just remind me, it has that wetland area. And is it the intention that the wetland area is in existence now and it's not touched, and any limit of line of disturbance, it's protected, or what's their plan there with that wetland area?
Good question. During the original PDO process, the delineation for the wetlands was put in place, and the platting of those lot lines was based on that delineation. And so all the buildings and parking are taking place outside of that wetland designation.
So when they go in and construct this, is
BMPs,
Yeah.
best management practices.
that defined? I mean, they have like their, seed mix, Rocky Mountain flower seed mix adjacent to it. I just don't want it left like, oh, I mucked it up right here and now I got off. This
Yeah.
is for your enforcement people, not really us
Right.
to talk about, but it's just, we don't often have development near wetlands, which in my opinion need to be protected.
Yeah, I'm going to give you what I call a 70-30 answer. Due to state requirements and local ordinance requirements for SWIP, they have to put in a best management practice plan, and that'll be all that erosion control and fencing.
Okay.
And that'll be delineated for the site and not spill into the wetlands. Now, the 30% answer is, that's not to say that somebody doesn't mess up with a piece of equipment and do something to the wetlands, but we'll know that fairly quickly, and the risk at that point is on the owner and the liability to the Army Corps.
Okay. That was just more for my education.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's good. And I share that concern as well. I'm inclined to support this. I will say, we run into this frequently where there's a subdivision, or development that puts a whole bunch of stuff into parking lots, parking spaces, and then later decides, oh, actually, I want to build on that. And then they're in a situation where they're underparked. So as a cautionary tale to the developer, if that is the plan moving forward, you're going to have to think through that, because we have parking requirements as in our code for a reason. And sometimes when you do things in stages, it doesn't always work out the way that you'd like. So that's the one thing that I feel always hesitant about in these types of situations, because as we see it now, yes, this works, but if they have other motives or intentions, it may not work. So that's my only thought left. Any other discussion and debate? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move for the planning commission to approve the submitted final site plan for the Paris Creek subdivision, lots 1, 3, and 4, subject to the conditions 1 through 7, for the reasons A through C.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? If not, Heidi?
Aye.
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 The motion passes, and so thank you very much. That's all we have to say. We will move along to number 4. We're cooking. Look how fast we're going, guys. Now, the next item is a public hearing with a zone map amendment for the rezone of 224 West Chase Lane. This is a legislative decision, and we will turn the time over to Corey.
Thank you again, Vice Chair Wright and members of the commission. Some credit needs to be where credit is due. Our new associate planner, Whitney, helped out with this report.
Awesome.
But running the media and stuff, she thought, give me a chance to get the media and meeting done first before I start competing with presentations. So
Because she's really waiting for her nameplate to be up there.
That's true.
They need to get on that.
Official.
She's official.
get official there. So I will cover the basis here. As you indicated, it's a legislative decision. They're asking for a rezone. We're sitting here on Chase Lane, what was it, 224? So that's a fairly large piece of property. It's currently zoned agricultural low. I believe the gentleman that is petitioning you also owns an additional piece of property and has been using this area for his garden and some other uses, and would like to now eventually develop the property. So you're looking at the Northwest Centerville Neighborhood Plan. This is always an interesting discussion. And this is because the policies are a bit unique to some extent in this neighborhood. Over time, the neighborhood has transitioned from agricultural zoning to residential low zoning. Back in 2003, the city holistically changed its residential zoning to RL and did not take some of the agriculture areas and rezone them to residential low as the Northwest Neighborhood Plan envisioned. And so there is a policy in this plan to maintain opportunities for future development, and that is for single-family, low-density development. Single-family, low-density development includes half-acre lots, that's the agriculture, as well as roughly quarter-acre lots in the RL, it's 4 units an acre. And so it meets that policy. The issue is, what is the agricultural zoning, and are we attempting to do something here with the preservation? The first element is that this neighborhood plan says that 1 acre lots and half acre zoning is not good agricultural zoning. It says we should create sometime in the future, never have yet taken place, semi-rural agricultural zoning of 5 acres or more. So,
Just find that, just find those 5 acres and make it
Yeah.
happen.
so whatever that general plan was envisioning for the 5 acres and more and studying that and creating a semi-rural zone has never taken place. So we are left with the discussion of, is it appropriate to move the agricultural low to a residential low? And if you look further in that neighborhood plan, the reason why it wasn't just automatically changed in 2003, the legislative decision is we're going to leave the agricultural in place for those who want to keep it in place. But whenever they're ready and ripe for changing it to the future, that's when we'll do it. And so that's where we're at this situation. So basically, we believe it meets the general plan policies. You have, how does it affect adjacent neighborhoods? What is its relationship to the adjacent neighborhoods? How will it impact that? And is there infrastructure in the area? So you have those remaining things to look at. There is some adjacent agricultural low, single-family development. You could make a subjective argument that until all of it's ready to be moved into the RL, we should wait for that. But again, that general plan never envisioned that. So it's a one owner request at a time. We do have it surrounded, so it's not unlike, this idea of leapfrog development where we jump out into some strange rural area and rezone it to 40 units an acre. So that leapfrog idea is not there. I'm exaggerating it so nobody in the city is offended that their quarter-acre lots are leapfrog development. But we don't really have that situation. You got public facilities around it. You have RL around it. You have a residential medium at Steeplechase around it. So this is looking like it's supposed to happen as per the plan over time. Chase Lane, infrastructure, water, it's all available. It's a large piece of property, so the ability to develop it into the future in RL is available. And so we've recommended approval.
Thank you so much, staff. Any questions? All right, we will turn the time over to the applicant to step forward and let us know about anything you'd like to address in the staff report or what staff has.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Mortensen. I'm one of the property owners. The Paul Fesser, who's the applicant, asked to be excused. He couldn't be here. He's the civil engineer putting together this development. He had another commitment. So the staff report's fine. We have nothing to add. We just see it as being consistent with the character of the area. And I live next door and I'm hoping to put a home there on a lot. So that's about it.
Do you know how many lots it's going to be?
It's 2.5 acres, so we have to figure that out still.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I was just going to ask how big it was, but he just answered that, so 2.5 acres.
I was going to say, are lots already sold?
It's a big location.
Thanks.
I hope not. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
This has been scheduled for a public hearing. We will now open up the public hearing, invite anyone from the public who wishes to speak to step forward and let us know what you think. Please state your name as you come.
Hello, I'm Brad Porter. I am the property owner directly west of the proposed new subdivision. 242. So I am largely in favor of the development. However, I do have some concerns because that will create a difference in the zoning between the two lots. So we'll have new residential lots there, but I'll also have my agricultural space where I might be having horses and chickens. And so I'm just concerned about that property line, that we ensure that we put something in there that delineates the two properties, because I just to avoid problems. Plus, so what I would recommend, and I don't know what the procedure is, but what I'd like to see happen is have the new builder or the developer provide a privacy fence between those two properties, so that you know, if we had chickens or horses or whatnot, it's a better situation.
Great.
So that's it for me. If we could do something on that property line to ensure that we can get along between the two kind of zoning types, that's really the only concern I have.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Staff, do you have anything to say in response to the public hearing?
Yeah, just for a couple of clarifications. These two zones by our ordinance, not the common sense argument, the practical argument, consider them low-density residential. So there's no ordinance requirement for a fence to be constructed either now or into the future. However, it's our experience that when developers build, they generally will install a fence between developments. But again, there's no mandatory requirement. As to the issue, whether it's good or bad, agricultural uses are considered protected under state law. And so the concern is, this neighbor has not voiced, but the concern is if they did have some farm animals and it created a odor or some type of impact, state law protects the agricultural user from that being included as a nuisance complaint. Now, if you store your hay wrong and you have rats and some infestations, that's something that could be done, but just so you know that chickens, I don't know what size it is, but you know, some sheep or something else, you know, there's limited, we have points, 100 points per acre, and you know, you have 2 horses per acre is your max, or 2 cows per acre is your max, or 4 sheep per acre is your max. I think it's like 40 chickens something per acre is max. But they're protected from at least the residents complaining about a legitimate agricultural operation. I don't think that answers the question directly, but that gives the perspective of ordinance versus law.
Right. And I think we had another situation in which someone had horses that were over the fence, and at that point there was some situation with the property line, but generally speaking, if like you mentioned, there's protected and people can go ahead and use their property as zoned.
Yep.
So question, and this is just because I can't find it right away. We do have screening and buffering requirements between agricultural and residential, don't we?
We don't. That was debated
Talked
a
about
while ago and failed to happen.
Yep. Kind of wish we did.
So you're remembering correctly.
But not fencing, but like setbacks or anything else
We
like that?
were having front yard setbacks and buffering of that nature, and it did come about.
All right.
It stayed at the residential high to the lower residentials.
Do we have a city-level policy or ordinance that requires that the proposed development plat for whatever would happen on this also include that agricultural note that says this is near agricultural uses?
We don't have an ordinance that requires it, but we did it with Woods Park. The applicant volunteered to put that note on it to get their approval.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
The Woods Park development, when they built that, and there was concern of agriculture, the attorney and owner of that property developing, as part of the negotiation of subdivision, put that direct note on their plat. But do we have an ordinance requirement for that note?
No. We could highly encourage that, but we won't require that. And just so as I'm looking at it, I can understand, even though there's the line, the lot line, the parcel line, I guess, the 224 includes that bigger and that skinny long as
Correct,
well.
correct, those two parcels.
Great. Thank you. Any further discussion?
I have another question. It's not reflected on the maps you're looking at, but when you go when you go to Davis County Parcel Search, it shows a creek running through here.
Which
Yes.
is that
It's that
dark
blue in
one?
the back.
No, there's a low-flow creek dividing through the property.
Between the two properties.
Yeah, and we've had discussions, it's not part of the rezone because it's part of their development approval, but they will contact the county, their plans are fairly minimal to handle that. So the major storm drainage is heading down that public facilities line that you see, but there is a low-flow requirement for that.
Yeah.
And at the time of development, they're very aware of having to keep that open and deliver it.
On that.
So there'll be some crossing with the road, but the rest of the development will keep that open. So you'll see that at development, but good catch from,
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Heidi?
I just don't know, my thoughts are always, I like to keep those open, I don't like to pipe them, but that's not typically what we do in this county.
Can you speak louder? Sorry. Yeah, a little bit louder.
Can we turn the microphones up too?
They are up as long as they will go.
Okay.
And just a reminder, this is a legislative decision on a rezone, so a lot of these comments about future development will come at a later time.
Sure.
This is just whether or not this is an appropriate zone and whether it meets the general plan.
Fantastic. Thank you for that
Back
redirection.
on track.
Any other thoughts, given that redirection? I generally, we talk a lot about if it's congruent with surrounding property, if it follows the plan, and if it is not spot zoning. And I think in all these cases, as our general plan tells, we would like to move from AL to RL. So I'm in favor of it. I think it would be great. I also really appreciate that it's a large lot and there's a lot you can do there. A lot of success can be had on that lot, I think. Successful plans.
Sounds like it was set up for this from years ago. And now is that day that we're here to
We're
address
seeing.
it. And I think that's great. I'm in favor as well.
And I'm also in favor, this item is different than the last item which I voted against, for the reasons that I've noted already. This is the horse driving the cart. This was the proper analysis. It's in compliance with the general plan. It is the direction that development needs to go. The geotechnical issue of a hillside is not in play here, whereas in the last one, the hillside hasn't changed, but the uses here around have changed. The analysis is significantly different. So even though it veers towards spot zoning, I don't consider it something that I should be voting against.
Great, I will entertain a motion. I'll go ahead. I hereby make a motion for the Planning Commission to recommend approval of the zoning map amendment for property located at 224 West Chase Lane, known as parcels 02-014-0050 and 02-014-0072 from the agricultural low to residential low zone, with suggested reasons for action A and B in the staff report.
I'll second.
So moved and seconded. We'll go ahead and start down here.
Aye.
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 Thank you. The motion has passed. Congratulations. We will, do you want to talk to them?
if I may.
Yep.
A little bit unlike the other item, since we were carrying the other item over for meetings and with the city council, I'm not sure this will make the next council agenda, given their schedule and things that staff have to do. So it'll likely be the following. We'll send you a letter with the estimated date that it would be on the agenda, but
The date of that following.
I don't know the date. They meet the first and third Tuesdays of the month.
October 4th.
Great.
October 4th is what I've been told.
October when?
4th, so likely be there, just so you know.
Fantastic. Thank you. We're going to move along to item number 5. This item has been scheduled for a public hearing. It's the conceptual subdivision for Canyon Point. This is an administrative decision, and we will turn the time over to staff as well.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wright and members of the commission. Just to step back, and because I've gotten several calls, because we've had to put a notice on this property for this particular meeting, and there are those individuals that have called me and say, what's changing and what's going on here? Nothing is changing. Just, I don't know about 6 months from now and the success of the future, but today's meeting is not about changing the Canyon Point development. What you have is the Canyon Point came in as a site plan. That site plan was vetted through the public hearing process. It includes the issue of the single-family homes and the 2 duplexes. That's still in place. What's happening and being requested is, as they pursue developing the property now under the site plan, the idea is to sell the individual dwelling units. In order to sell the individual dwelling units, they have to do a planned unit development subdivision under our subdivision ordinance. Sometimes, and most of the time, you see those run concurrently, but we're seeing it more consecutive at this point. So what the applicant wants to do is basically show you that they plan on dividing up the individual homes into some lots for purchase, keep some common areas for the open space, and he's provided that conceptual schematic of the division of the property. What I've done is I've also attached the previous site plan information, because that's handling your infrastructure that you normally would see early in a subdivision, how they're doing the open space, recalling their final site plan to you. We have all of that data and information. So now we're just really preparing the plat for division. A PUD subdivision is a much more flexible tool because it's being used in these situations where you have multifamily development and converting them for sale units. So you're really looking at, one, the general plan, which was managed during this final site plan process, and 2, you're looking at how the lots, layout, streets, open space would work. And you have that as far as functionality. What the subdivision changes is now we're going to divide up the property into multiple owners instead of a single owner managing it. And so we're going to move to the next direction of ensuring that the common open space stays open, ensuring that it gets maintained. And you also can add in how it's disposed of into the future if there's a concern about disposing the property if the owners fail. This translates to a homeowners association being created, and then the covenants, conditions, and restrictions being put together and recorded against the property. So that's what you're seeing in the subdivision, how they're going to divide it up. And then I'm calling out, when we get to the preliminary plat, we're now going to see how the plat's going to look. We're starting to see the signature blocks. We know how the infrastructure is working. And we're moving towards, again, a title report coming in due time for the recording of the plat. And we're looking at the creation of those CC&Rs. So essentially, a lot of the conceptual and preliminary information has been handled at the conceptual and final site plan.
Great.
And so we're doing the formality steps in the public hearing for converting it to a subdivision. So we're recommending you move it to the preliminary level.
Fantastic, thank you. Are there any questions for Corey? If not, we'll invite the applicant to step forward and address the staff report or anything Corey just mentioned.
No, Chad Morris, thank you, part owner of that. He pretty much addressed it fairly well. You already approved it. We're now just trying to separate each lot so that those can be sold to individuals with individual tax IDs. And yes, we are currently working on the HOA documents and that and whatnot. So that's in the process as we're moving. So.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question, this was probably just me being stupid, but how come they're not all labeled private lots? Is it just,
Oh,
is that just because that you're just trying to, but they're all private?
they're all private lots.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, the intent was all the black outline is private lots. The red area is the limited, and green is common.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, this item has been scheduled for a public hearing. So at this time, we will open the public hearing and invite any members of public who would like to speak to come and address the Planning Commission. Movement, I'm not sure, movement, not movement, okay. Seeing no one come, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. I don't think there's any applicant response. And any further questions for staff? If not, I'll open it up to discussion and debate.
Seems straightforward to me. Seems like we've seen it before, seems like we're just going through the formula, we're just checking all the boxes. It's a process.
This is an administrative decision, and seeing that they have, according to the staff report, done everything that needs to be done to make this decision happen, doesn't seem like there is anything, standing in the way. So I will entertain a motion. Sean? I know you haven't been able to do it yet. Anyone.
I make a motion for the planning commission to accept the conceptual subdivision plan for Canyon Point and Centerville Development located at approximately 347 North, 400 East, subject to the following conditions, 1 and 2. Suggested reasons, let's see, and then suggested reasons for actions A through B.
Do I have a second?
A second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any more discussion or debate? If not, Heidi?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you very much. Anything you want to say, staff, or no?
You'll get a letter.
Okay, fantastic, thank you so much. All right, we're going to move along to our 6th item on the agenda. This is also a public hearing addressing zoning text amendments to CZC 12.68.050, which is the Shorelands Commerce Park design standards and specifically the signage. This is a legislative decision, and we will turn the time over to staff.
Vice Chair Wright, I know Commissioner Chagud is on a time crunch. Is there any way you want to manage that so that she can participate?
What are you looking at? 10 minutes?
Yeah, I gotta go in 9 minutes. It's cool, I'll just go when I have to.
Okay, I'll go really fast then get to that comment. So the amendment is to come into our Shorelands Commerce Park. It sits in the Northwest Centerville Neighborhood Plan. It is our job creation center, but it's basically an industrial type zoning, but we've modified it to have some design standards under the model ordinance that was adopted way back when the Legacy Parkway was developed. 5 cities created a model ordinance. Each city went then and modified it to their own discretion.
Just 1 second.
That was a fast response.
Oh, I did hit that. I apologize.
Okay, so you just want to make sure.
But come just as fast next time.
Thank you. I apologize. I knocked my knee on something and it was.
Can you reset it? Do you know how to reset it? Because it's still.
Pull it back out. I think you just have to pull it.
Thank you.
I didn't even know that
They
existed.
can pull the hands.
What is that?
I apologize.
Okay, we're good. As long as you guys are good, we're good.
They let me in this spot anyway.
Thank you.
Public was getting
Yes,
out of hand.
thank you.
What did you hit?
There's a big red button under here apparently.
That was easy.
Panic button?
A panic button.
And it hits their radios.
No, it was probably supposed to be
So
secret.
I
We all
appreciate
just
our
announced it to the YouTube.
awesome police force and their quick
Response time.
response time. And I apologize for interrupting.
It's always fun. Always fun.
Please continue.
I just saw the concerned look on his face.
I know.
Like, whoa.
Walked in like, I was like,
So, setting back, the 5 cities got together, created a model ordinance back during the Legacy Parkway construction. Each city adopted that model ordinance as they wanted to fit. We followed a lot of the standards in that model ordinance. Some cities had some differences, but we did follow a lot of those standards. It was designated as a byway. It went up from the committee to the governor. He signed it. It created real much consternation among the state legislatures that a byway would be designated without their notification and approval. So it led to byway designation changes. But nonetheless, that remains as a byway. Since then, the committee has tried to argue the truck traffic and maintain that. They lost their argument after, I think it was an 11-year period. and it's now being treated as the freeway for the traffic that UDOT wants to run. They also have plans to add additional lanes to that and reserving the right-of-way for that. So anticipate some development for that depending on capacity needs. The question that this leads to is the byway was set up as a shorelands theme, and that's why we call it the Shorelands Commerce Park. And the idea was to not have freeway-oriented signs, not have pole signs for each business, reduce the type of lighting that happens into the area, don't have the formal landscaping of turf, and make it an upland environment. And then they have a color palette that's supposed to be shorelands contextually sensitive. What has happened is the applicants want to place a taller sign on their building. And it's a wall sign. A wall sign is limited to the sizes of our standard IH zone, but is limited to 15 feet in height placement on the building. And instead of just a backlit, internally illuminated, it has to be an externally illuminated sign in individual letters, whether that's a plaque with individual letters, whether it's individual pan channels, it doesn't matter, but they're supposed to do that. What they'd like to do is change the 15-foot requirement and allow it to go to the top. A little bit of egg on community development's face. Cook's Building came in, installed the desired sign designs, but put them above 15 feet. And our staff failed to recognize that the Shorelands added the because you now can put it up to the level of your building, but in the Shorelands it was no more than 15 feet. And they failed to catch that there's an additional sign regulation with that zoning district. And so they approved 2 signs. So they showed an example and said, why can't we do this? Yeah, it's not a very pretty moment to get a phone call like that. And I said, well, we'll have to look and address that issue, whether it was improperly permitted, whether there's other legal arguments with it, but as of now, you can't put your sign there. And they said, well, how can we change it? So that's why they're here. They'd like to change it. They don't want any other changes other than allow them to go higher under the wall signing.
You're saying higher up on the wall.
Higher up on the
Yep.
wall.
Great.
We're supporting it, but given time, we can discuss that, but I know Commissioner Shagrud may have some comments.
Any questions for staff? Pretty straightforward. Okay, let's open it up to the applicant. If they'd like to come. Is the applicant here? I don't see the applicant here. Okay, there is no applicant here. Great. Well, we are going to open this up for a public hearing. Invite anyone who is interested in speaking from the public to come state their name and tell us what they think.
Chad Morris. I'm actually just curious if you have examples of signs that we can see, if there's pictures.
Show the one that they submitted.
Not that I'm fighting or
Like that.
anything.
So the white is current, is that right?
Correct.
And the black would be proposed above.
Okay.
And the logo concept is the one that's higher.
Yeah.
That's the one that's done improperly.
Yeah.
See it above the windows instead of between them.
Oh. I'm actually in favor of it as well, so.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? If not, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Any further questions for staff?
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
So, I understand and I just also acknowledge that we are humans and we make mistakes. And so whether the building department missed the logo concepts and it's out of compliance, I think we need to acknowledge that we're human, mistakes happen, but just because we allowed for it to happen here doesn't mean we should allow for it to happen everywhere. I'm strongly in favor of just keeping the ordinance as it sits and not modifying it, and then maybe we work outside the box and maybe make a decision on a case-by-case basis if a variance is warranted. I do have a question for Corey. It's the other 5 cities, have they changed their ordinance?
I don't know particular signs, but they've modified that model ordinance.
Do you feel like ours is outside the normal practice?
Ours is pretty aggressive. The model ordinance was really aggressive compared to a lot of cities' tolerance levels. I don't know a sign. We're aggressive. You have no freestanding signs, right?
Right.
And you can't do the internally illuminated. Has to be the channel and externally illuminated. The 15 feet versus 25 feet, that's what you're looking at a difference in. Our buildings are set back from Legacy at 150 feet. You can't put two Legacy within 150 feet. And so, yes, you could argue the cart before the horse before the cart on this one. Staff didn't look at it trying to make up a mistake.
Okay.
We looked at it at the merits of, is this still applicable? And
I think it boils down to, this is a value we've set for our community, and do we still believe that should be our value? Do we still believe that we put that in place for a reason, and it was a scenic byway? I understand greater powers at the state have changed that designation, but we then took it upon ourselves to make this Shoreline Commerce Park District and gave it those requirements to meet. And so, do we think it's time to change that value? Do we need to change that value, or do we just say, nope, this is our value, this is the ordinance that and we just stick to it?
And I think that's your discussion. That's right on point. We looked at the general plan language, and that wasn't the expectation of the general plan to be that specific on signing. I look at success, business signing is always a sacred place for everybody. And so I think you make that distinction, is this the value you want? And I look at all of the ordinance requirements, the distances to buildings, the lack of other signing to be, I don't think moving 15 to 25 violates the general plan. And so at this point in time, what additional value are we protecting? And I looked at the distances to buildings and so forth and the protection. And I think the 15 was just selected because they were trying to stay away from freeway-oriented designs.
Right, and then it comes into you have in Centerville, as you mentioned, we have limited, we have 2 billboards in our whole city, really, and we have. 4. Okay, fine. We have limited, that's just not our character. I think that, the face of this building faces west. So what value does he get from raising it? Who's going to see it west of this building? What value does he really get from raising it? It's not Legacy. Legacy is not going to see this sign. I'm sorry, I do have to excuse myself. If I get to vote, my vote is not in favor of this. I think we should keep the language as it is, and it was there for a reason, and I think we should just support it.
Thank you so much.
I apologize, and I excuse myself, I'm sorry.
Grab a treat.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Commissioners?
You're all waiting till I leave, I see. Well, you're all gonna disagree with me, it's fine, but there you go.
I will disagree in a few things. I would like to maintain the type of signage that we have. I don't want lighted, I don't want anything that's off of the building. I agree that I don't want any billboards. I'm trying to decide if this leads us to billboards. So I think where on the building, to me, is slightly less important than the type of signage, or if it's not on the building. Because if that were the case, I think that would substantially change the look and feel of the Shorelands Commerce Park and our design standards in a way that I don't feel would reflect what's there and what I believe the plan or the desired outcome was. But that's one thought. So other commissioners?
What other buildings have like the logo concepts? Do they have it on their building like that, or do they have the smaller ones? Do you know?
The Salmon HVAC buildings that are constructed have that middle sign
That white one?
where their tenant spaces. The white building with the wood trim is just 2 signs on that building.
Would they remove that white one if they're putting up the black one?
They'd have to stay within the amount allowed. That's not changing. So I don't know the amount allowed off the top of my head, but they'd have to stay within the area allowed. It's 15% of the primary facade, 5% of the secondary, and 32 square feet for the other two.
I don't think it looks bad in my opinion. I don't think it would.
You're talking about the black one
The
above?
black, yeah. I don't think.
To be honest, in my opinion, it's actually less intrusive than what they currently
white,
have.
I agree. Any some thoughts? On signage?
I can understand Commissioner Chagrood's concerns. I don't think that this is the camel's nose in the tent, so to speak, that she seems to be concerned about, so I'm more in favor.
Yeah, I think if we're looking at the text amendment change, and just to confirm this with you, Corey, we'd still have low profile, monument style, it would still be complying with not allowing for off of building signage.
Correct. The freestanding sign is another element, so no freestanding signs. We do not allow off-premise signs for billboards, even in the entire city. So we have to deal with the state laws regarding billboards. This would just change the wall placement from the standard industrial sizing, but we add to this that it's limited to 15 feet. This would just return it back to the normal. But we'd still maintain the externally illuminated pan channel style sign.
And the
So now we're just
percentage-
arguing about height.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I feel like it is, yeah, pretty clear. Any other thoughts? All right, I will entertain a motion.
So I hereby make a motion for the Planning Commission to recommend approval of the proposed zoning code text amendment to CZC 12.68.050H regarding signs on the Shorelands Commerce Park District as follows, as noted in the staff report, findings as noted in the staff report.
I'll second that. It's been moved and seconded. Any other further discussion? I will just note, I appreciate Commissioner Chagrood's comments, as she's gone now, but appreciate her thoughts, and turn over to Mason.
Aye.
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 It has been approved, so thank you for that.
The applicant's not here, but they'll get a letter.
Don, I'll get a letter. Fantastic. All right. So we have gone through all 6 business items. On to our Community Development Director's report, and we'll turn that over to Corey.
Pulling it up. Okay, so next planning commission meeting, we've actually had some applications come in, but they came past the deadline, and so they'll be on your following meeting. But we have a site plan amendment. This is the hive development and the fencing height. If some of you were on here and discussed the fencing height on the north side, they're coming to some practical understanding about their development, so they'll bring that back
Are
to
they
you.
trying to increase or decrease?
Increase. Then we're trying to make sure I can make the agenda, if you're okay, to put the landscaping ordinance amendments. There's not very many that we discussed, but I think we should move that forward and send it on to council because that was a request they have. So if you're okay, if I can hit the noticing correctly, it should be due tomorrow, so hopefully I can do it. The moderate income housing amendments, I'm just going to give you that they passed it, and then I'm going to give my editorial was, it happened so fast and so quick with very little discussion.
I know, I said just like as recommended, I'm like, wait, what?
Ask Lisa, I think my eyes were pretty big.
It was like Christmas.
No discussion on that.
Well, you know what, I feel like that goes to show we went through deep discussion in that to try to come up with a great recommendation, so Good.
So I don't know if they
Good
viewed
to
the
you.
meetings, I don't know what it was.
Maybe they were watching us on YouTube and saw all the deliberation that we
They
had.
Maybe.
They appreciated the effort.
Yes.
But, you know, I anticipated, I mean, there's still the discussion that this group had. We've
Yes.
had it with them in the past. It's not, but they just said, yeah, this is really a good choice that the commission made. I mean, I tried to just say, I think the commission did a great job and da-da-da. I really tried to pump up your work, and maybe that was it. Maybe I'll do that every time. They are so perfect at what they do, you can't possibly say no.
Except for when they hit that big red button, the only thing that they do wrong.
Excitement for the night. And then your planning commission goals, you've always asked to be up there. We're maybe not as quickly, but we're plugging away.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Corey. Let's move along to our minutes review and acceptance approval. And for Wednesday, August 24th, we'll just go page by page and ask if anyone has any changes to page 1. I do appreciate that you noted the exact time that I arrived to show how late I was.
Say it and see that word.
Not to.
It should have arrived early in the meeting. That's what it should say.
It's a requirement, right? Yep. Thank you. Okay, page 2. Any changes? Page 3. Page 4. All right, I will entertain a motion. I will go ahead and move to accept the planning commission minutes of the Wednesday, August 24th, 2022 meeting as unamended.
One second.
Oh, look at everyone's so excited.
Oh, man, we were
about
just
that
ready to go.
one. Thanks, Christina. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, and I move that we adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded, moved.
All in favor?
Aye. You're gun shy on that one.
Thank you. I was like, what's happening?